right, this is the long-term discipleship module, and I'm going to do it from my van, and that will encourage you to do a better video somewhere else. But for now, this is the module. So before we jump into long-term, let's talk about short-term for just a second. Short-term discipleship is 6 to 11 lessons that sets a foundation for discipleship. Now, the foundation, we need to think about the end state of what you want at the end of that short term. What's your DNA going to look like? For many of us, we want to set a good DNA for church. So that's what determines our 6 to 11 lessons. So let's talk about long term. Well, long term, when you think about it, discipleship is not a short-term venture. It's a lifetime venture. So once we finish with short term, we got to move on to things that are going to help us become like Christ for the rest of our life. In Luke 6:40, it says, "The student is not above his teacher, but when he's fully trained, he becomes like his teacher." Jesus said that. And so we're going to spend the rest of our lives becoming like Christ. Now, we have several options for long-term discipleship, and it's probably going to be a combination of all of these. One is story by story. You may have used a storytelling process in your short-term discipleship. Well, you can continue that, and I'll put a link in the description below of all the stories in the Bible so that you can easily access them. If you're just starting out with long-term discipleship, one of the easiest things to do is just go to the book of Mark and work through it a chapter at a time. And that's super easy, and then you can move on to other books in the Bible. Mix it up, New Testament, Old Testament, very effective. Another option is look at the challenges within your church or individuals, and then do topical Bible studies to address that challenge. Now, one of my favorites for long-term discipleship is working through the modules in the 4-day intensive. Of course, we're not going to do it in 4 days. We're going to work through a module at a time. Now, what that does for us is it really sets a great foundation for multiplying disciples and multiplying churches. It's very apostolic, though, so you just have to take that into consideration. And those 4-day modules can be found in the video description below. I'll leave a link. You need to make sure that you continue some very important things as you move on to long-term discipleship. I've seen people make this mistake. The very things that help them get a firm foundation in discipleship, they begin to leave, or they think they graduated from these things and they lose the bubble in discipleship. So some of those things that you need to make sure you continue in long-term discipleship is, number one, just keep it simple. The way that you did short-term discipleship should be the way that you do long-term. Our tendency is we want to go deep, and we make our discussions really complicated and hard to do. Just keep it simple. That way it'll reproduce. Remember, application is the meat. You're going to get people that ask, where's the meat in this Bible study? Or where's the meat in our church? The meat is the application. That is where the real meal is. Use the 3/3. You want to make sure you continue to set goals, that you continue to cast vision, that you continue to hold one another accountable, and that you continue to practice. one of the things that you're going to find is you're going to get rusty on some of the basic skills that you've become competent and confident in. So every once in a while, you need to circle back around and practice those very basics. So keep practicing basic things like sharing your story, sharing God's story, the 4 fields, baptizing others, serving communion. You'll need to practice those things. And lastly, be the church. Don't stop being church just because you've entered into long-term discipleship. In fact, your relationships as the church is really what's going to challenge you and keep you going in long-term discipleship. All right, in field 3, you have 3 elements that you need to focus on. 1, short-term discipleship. 2, long-term discipleship. And 3, the 3/3 process.